The First World War was meant to end all wars. Instead, it left over 16 million dead and millions more wounded. Trenches crisscrossed Europe like scars. Soldiers endured mud, lice, gas, and the relentless roar of artillery. Entire empires, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, collapsed, leaving fragile new nations struggling to exist. Germany, humiliated and burdened with reparations under the Treaty of Versailles, saw its people plunged into despair. Economic hardship, hyperinflation, and political chaos created fertile ground for radical ideologies. Among those deeply affected was Adolf Hitler, born in Austria in 1889. He served on the Western Front, decorated for bravery, yet returned to a Germany full of resentment and unrest. Hitler's early life, marked by a difficult father, the death of his younger brother, and a failed artistic career, had cultivated in him a sense of destiny intertwined with grievance. These experiences shaped his obsession with nationalism, antisemitism, and the idea of a pure Aryan state. In Italy, Benito Mussolini, formerly a socialist journalist, turned to fascism. His rise was theatrical and strategic. He promised Italy a return to Roman grandeur, blending militarism with propaganda. In private, however, Mussolini wrestled with insecurity, knowing he depended on Hitler's growing power to secure Italy's ambitions. In Japan, Hideki Tojo, raised in a strict military family, rose to power through loyalty, discipline, and a belief in Japan's destiny. Tojo's worldview justified conquest as necessary for survival, shaping policies that would lead to devastating campaigns across Asia and the Pacific. Britain, scarred by the First World War, prepared cautiously. Winston Churchill, once sidelined politically, had first-hand experience of warfare. He had served in the trenches and witnessed disasters like Gallipoli. His warnings about Hitler's rise were initially dismissed, but his persistence and moral clarity would eventually galvanize a nation. Across the Atlantic, the United States, recovering from the Great Depression, observed from afar. While isolationism dominated policy, Roosevelt quietly prepared the nation for the inevitability of conflict. The world was simmering on the edge. Ideology, ambition, and trauma from the past set the stage for a global conflagration. Hitler's appointment as Chancellor in 1933 transformed Germany. Streets echoed with rallies and propaganda. Ordinary citizens, traumatized by war and economic collapse, embraced his promises of order, strength, and national pride. Hitler's charisma was undeniable. His speeches, precise gestures, and intense gaze captivated crowds. Privately, he obsessively studied maps, military tactics, and political maneuvers, a man whose vision of destiny left no room for dissent. Mussolini projected unwavering confidence. His dramatic speeches and parades were part performance, part psychological warfare. Beneath the spectacle, he feared being overshadowed by Hitler's rising power. Tojo, in Japan, emphasized loyalty to the emperor above all else. Education, propaganda, and military training reinforced the idea that sacrifice in battle was noble and necessary for national survival. In Britain, Churchill's voice became a symbol of resistance. He combined vivid imagery with emotional appeal, urging the country to resist tyranny at all costs. His personal courage, political resilience, and understanding of human psychology would inspire a nation on the brink of destruction. September 1, 1939, saw Germany invade Poland. Using blitzkrieg, rapid, coordinated attacks, German forces overwhelmed Polish defenses. Cities fell, soldiers died, and civilians were displaced. Britain and France, honoring alliances, declared war. The early months, the so-called a phony war, left Europe in tense anticipation, a calm before the storm. By 1940, Germany conquered France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Hitler's focus turned to Britain. The Luftwaffe's bombing raids, the Blitz, terrorized Londoners. Families took shelter in underground stations. Children were evacuated to countryside homes. Churchill's speeches, broadcast nationwide, became lifelines. A "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender." In the East, Hitler invaded the Soviet Union in 1941. Operation Barbarossa was the largest invasion in history, yet it underestimated Russian resilience in the harsh winter. Georgy Zhukov, a tactical genius hardened by Stalinist purges, orchestrated counterattacks that would eventually crush German advances. Soldiers endured freezing temperatures, starvation, and exhaustion. Letters home reveal acts of bravery and humanity. Comrades sharing rations, risking themselves to save others, and clinging to hope amidst despair. North Africa became a theatre of strategic brilliance. Erwin Rommel, their desert fox, used speed, deception, and daring maneuvers to outwit opponents. Across the desert, Bernard Montgomery carefully prepared, understanding that patience and logistics were as critical as courage. Both respected each other's skill, even across enemy lines. In the United States, Roosevelt mobilized the nation. Factories churned out tanks, planes, and ships. Women and minorities joined the workforce, symbolized by Rosie the Riveter. Roosevelt, despite polio, inspired millions through radio broadcasts, combining reassurance with urgency. The Pacific Theater tested ingenuity and courage. Douglas MacArthur, vowing to return to the Philippines, became a symbol of hope. Admiral Chester Nimitz orchestrated complex naval operations, balancing strategy and risk. Battles at Midway and Guadalcanal became defining moments, blending heroism with unimaginable sacrifice. 1944 marked a pivotal moment. The Allies prepared for D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Dwight D. Eisenhower coordinated thousands of ships, planes, and troops. On June 6, soldiers faced sheer terror, gunfire, obstacles, and chaotic waves of attack, yet determination and camaraderie prevailed. Accounts of brothers fighting together, medics rescuing the wounded under fire, and letters written in the final moments before death illustrate the human side of war. On the Eastern Front, Zhukov pressed toward Berlin. Hitler, increasingly delusional, refused to surrender, believing in his destiny even as the Reich crumbled. Diaries reveal obsession, paranoia, and the refusal to accept defeat, culminating in his suicide in April 1945. Italy's mountainous terrain saw brutal battles. Civilians endured hunger, displacement, and terror, while Allied forces pushed north slowly. Liberation was hard-won and costly. In the Pacific, Japanese soldiers, often teenagers, fought with extraordinary determination. Iwo Jima and Okinawa were scenes of unimaginable carnage. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced surrender, ending the war abruptly and forever changing the nature of warfare. Over 70 million lives were lost. Europe, Asia, and the Pacific bore scars that would last generations. The Holocaust revealed the depths of human cruelty, while liberation demonstrated resilience and hope. Leaders like Hitler, Mussolini, Tojo, Churchill, Roosevelt, Eisenhower, and Zhukov shaped history, but ordinary people defined it through acts of courage and humanity. The war left an indelible mark. Technology, strategy, diplomacy, and morality were forever altered. The post-war world saw new alliances, the founding of the United Nations, and the enduring lesson that history is defined not only by battles, but by the human experiences within them.